Soap calculators, they don't need to be scary. They're really simple tools that do one basic function, which is tell you how much lye you need to saponify your oils so you can make some awesome soap. Stop, done, that's it, that's what they do. Why a lot of soap makers are scared or actually just really overwhelmed is because there's a lot of information presented on the screen, and it's not the most user-friendly for some of the soap calculators. But what we're going to do in this video is we're going to just go through them simply, slowly, one at a time, and completely demystify your questions about soap calculators. And before we look at the calculators, I want to demystify one big myth about soap calculators. Soap calculators are not soap formulators. You're the soap formulator. You're the one that determines what oils are going into the recipe, how much of those oils are going into the recipe, what the superfat is, what fragrance you're going to use, what additives you're going to use, how much water you're going to use. Is that water going to be water or milk or anything else? All of that. That's soap formulating, and that's what you do based on your knowledge and your skills and your experience with making soap. What the soap calculator does is calculates the amount of lye you need to saponify your oils. It does that based on having a chart of what are called SAP, S-A-P, SAP values, which is just a list of numbers that humans have come up with that says olive oil needs this much sodium hydroxide to saponify the fatty acids in it. Coconut oil needs this much, etc., through all the oils. SAP values can be found online. They're in the Ultimate Natural Soap Making course. And the calculators, of course, tell you the SAP values. And we'll look at where you can see that information. You can also do all of this math by hand. You don't need a calculator, although they're really cool and they do the math for us, which is awesome, right? But I do suggest everyone learn how to do the math just once. It really helps you understand what's going on with these calculators. And yeah, you're just going to be a better soap maker for it. There is a lesson in the Ultimate Natural Soap Making course that explains how to do all the math. So go check that out. But let's look at how these lye calculators can do all that math for us. We're going to be looking at two calculators. The probably most popular one or most well-known one is soapcalc.net. That's because it's been around the longest. And then there's a newer one, a few years old, soapmakingfriend.com. And we're going to look at both of those. We're going to look at the exact same functions on both of them side by side. And I'm also going to leave a couple links down below where I have done 3 other soap calculator videos for you. One is all about Soap Calc. The other is all about Soap Making Friend. And then the third one goes into detail about SoapMaker 3 Pro, which is the software I use when I'm formulating my recipes. Okay. Let's go take a look at these 2 online soap calculators and demystify soap calculators so you can go make some awesome soap. Here we are at soapcalc.net, and the first section we're going to talk about is the type of lye. SoapCalc gives you 2 options, NaOH for sodium hydroxide or bar soap, or you can choose KOH, potassium hydroxide, to make a liquid soap paste. You also can choose a 90% KOH. That means your KOH is 90% pure. Most KOH is not 100% pure, and it ranges between 90 to 100%. Over at soapmakingfriend.com, you'll see those same options. You can make solid soap using NaOH, sodium hydroxide, and you can set the purity of it if you need to. You can make your liquid soap and set the exact purity of your KOH. Notice with both solid soap and liquid soap, you could also use a master batch lye solution. There's more info on that over on my website, up on YouTube as well. You could make a hybrid soap using both KOH and NaOH, and you would set the percentages and purities here Or you could even make a non-soap product which negates all of the need of sodium or potassium hydroxide. Well, I hope that helped you understand just this one little section of soap calculators. If you have more questions, let me know. I'll see you next time when we talk about another section of soap calculators. And until then, happy soaping, my friends. When you are in a soap calculator, one of the bits of information you need to enter in is how much soap are you going to make? And in this case, you always enter in the amount of oils you're going to saponify versus the total amount of soap you're going to make. Because one batch of soap includes the weight of oils, the weight of water, the weight of the sodium hydroxide, and the weight of any additives. But what you're telling your soap calculator is the weight of the oils, because that's the math it's going to be doing. On soapcalc.net, the second section, weight of oils, you just select pounds, ounces, or grams. I always recommend you use grams. It's just a superior measurement, especially when we're dealing with small batch soap making. I have this set to 1,000 grams. You would enter in here the amount of oils you need to saponify in order to fill your mold. If you don't know what that number is, but you want to figure that out for a soap you've made before, head over to soapyfriends.com. There is a free tutorial on how to resize your recipe to fill any mold you have perfectly to the tippy top. Okay, over on soapmakingfriend.com, this looks a little bit the same, but a little bit different. So you still have the amount of oils you're going to saponify, but there's kind of two ways to do this. One, you can tell this calculator that you know percentages, so you're going to use 20% olive oil or whatever, and then you enter in the total amount of oils, so 1,000. And here's the grams, kilograms, pounds, ounces. You could also tell, hey, I'm just no grams. I'm not dealing with those percentages. I want you, the calculator, to tell me the percentages. And so when you enter in each of your oils down here, you would enter in the grams that you have noted on your recipe, and it will calculate the percentages for you. But I'm going to show you one other thing. If you are dealing with percentages here on Soap Making Friend, you can resize your recipe to fit a mold size. Now, this is a little bit more advanced to go into as far as time here, but go ahead and play with it. You really just measure your mold and it'll do some magic math for you. It's not as accurate as my worksheet, but it's pretty gosh darn close. So I hope that helps you with using soap calculators. And if you do have any other questions, let me know. And until next time, happy soaping, my friends. When you're dealing with the amount of water you use in your formulation for soap making, the minimum amount you need is equal amounts water to your lye amount, because that's what's required to dissolve the sodium or potassium hydroxide. In soap calculators, the water portion typically defaults to 38% of the oils. I've talked about why that is insanity on other videos, so go watch those. You could also do a lye concentration. What my preference is to do a ratio. The minimum ratio needed is 1:1, 1 part water to 1 part lye. Over on soapmakingfriends.com, and they have the same thing here, a liquid to lye ratio, or you could call it a 50% lye concentration. That's the same thing. Or you could do the kind of really weird as a percent of your oils. But again, we won't go into that here. All right, soapy friends, that's the real super quick down and dirty basics of letting a lye calculator calculate how much water you need for your recipe. But just remember, you need a minimum of equal parts water to sodium hydroxide. Any more than that is extra. Calculate that any way you want to calculate that. If you're doing hot process, definitely do at least 2:1. If you're doing cold process, don't do any more than 2:1. All right, my soapy friends, until next time, happy soaping. Superfat is simply the amount of oils in your formulation that are not going to saponify. If you are creating a cold process formulation, all of your oils are going to be put into a pot and the lye solution will sort itself out as far as what will saponify and what will not saponify. For hot process, you can add the superfat oils in after the cook to guarantee that they won't be saponified. But in order to calculate how much superfat you want or how much of your oils you do not want saponified, you would simply add that in right here on Soap Calc. It defaults to 5%. Soap makers go anywhere from 5% all the way up to a crazy amount like 20% for a 100% coconut oil bar. Love 120% coconut oil soaps. I will superfat a basic body bar anywhere between 5 to 8%. Let's look at it on Soap Making Friend. Superfat, right up here at the top, you simply pop in the amount of superfat you want, anywhere from 5 to 20%, just like with Soap Calc. What I do really like about Soap Making Friend is if you're doing a superfat after the cook for hot process, you can pick what oil is going to be that superfat, and it will pull it out separately so you don't have to do any further math. Hope that helps my soapy friends. I'll see you for the next part where we continue exploring soap calculators. Happy soaping! Both soapcalc.net and soapmakingfriends.com allows you to specify the fragrance amount that you would like to use for your soap calculations. On Soap Calc, the fragrance line is where you put in the manufacturer supplied ratio of fragrance that is allowed to be used in a wash-off product. It is based on the weight of oils you're going to be using in your recipe. So you just need to, from your manufacturer, you just need to have them tell you how much can be used. And since we're using grams on Soap Calc, I have to enter that in as grams per kilogram. Once you hit the calculation button, it will convert that into grams for you. Let's look at it on Soap Making Friend. The fragrance, that's a little bit down here at the bottom in its own little section. You can have the percent of the oil weight that can be fragrance. Again, information you get from your fragrance supplier. Or you could have it grams per kilogram, just like in Soap Calc. And then you can even build your blends out here. Soap Making Friend has a good tutorial on doing that. Hope that helps my soapy friends. I'll see you for the next part where we continue exploring soap calculators. Happy soaping! The next thing you need to do is determine what type of fats, oils, and waxes you're going to be using in your soap recipe. On Soap Calc, you are presented with a list of oils here that you can scroll through. When you click on each oil, it will tell you the fatty acid profile for that oil, and then it also gives you some numbers about hardness, cleansing, conditioning. More information on all of this is in the Ultimate Natural Soap Making course over on the site. And in order to get your oil into the recipe, all you have to do is double click on it. It then shows up in your list of oils. And we can either find how much we want to use based on percentages. So I could say I want 10% avocado, or I could specify grams to enter. So if I already knew the recipe and I wanted to list it out in grams, either one is fine. Over on Soap Making Friend, it's basically the same thing. You have a scrollable list of oils. You can also type the oil name in and search for it. You click the plus sign and let's do 10%. And if I mouse over this little icon and it tells you the fatty acid profile for that specific oil, it also tells you the SAP value, that's the saponification value, for either KOH or NaOH of that oil. Soap Calc shows you that too. When you have any oil selected, it shows down at the bottom of the list. Again, there's more information about the fatty acid profiles for oils and formulating and understanding which oils you should choose and why over in the Ultimate Natural Soap Making course. So be sure to go check that out over on soapyfriends.com. Once you have all of your oils entered into Soap Calc, the next thing you need to do is you need to click the little calculate button. Once you hit that calculate recipe button down here, if you are doing percentages, your gram column will fill in. If you're doing grams, your percentage column would then fill in. Underneath the soap qualities and fatty acids, these will populate with the values of the recipe. So the blue column here is the recipe. The white column, that's the oil selected in this list. You also will see the saturated and unsaturated fatty acid profile. The other thing that you'll want to do is click the view or print recipe. That does open your recipe up in a new tab. It gives you all the information you need. You can print this out. You can type in some additives, notes, give your recipe a name, just for convenience for when you click the print recipe button. Over on soapmakingfriend.com, we see that this populated both percentages and grams kind of as I was going. And over on the sidebar here, all of this started populating as you're adjusting your oils. There are also a couple other features that Soap Making Friend has. You can add specific additives to your recipe. So we can add charcoal, and it has defaults for how it should be added. You can also add custom liquids. All of this custom additives and the custom liquids, all of that information, that does not affect these charts and the final information of your profile for your soap. Soap calculators, no matter which one you're using, are intended to tell you how much sodium hydroxide or potassium hydroxide you need in order to saponify a given amount of fats based on their SAP values. Simple as that. All right, well, let me know if you have any other questions about soap calculators. Go check out full video over on YouTube. And of course, the Ultimate Natural Soap Making course for a lot more information about formulating your own soaps. Happy soaping, my friends.